Us today, and for more, I want to bring in Virginia Democratic Representative Subramanyam. Thank you so much for joining us. So, look, Congressman, you just heard there, these negotiations still seem to be ongoing. I know you've been really vocal about some things that you would like to change in this bill. Can you walk us through where this stands right now as you know it and what amendments you're pushing for?
Yeah, in general, this has not been a bipartisan process at all. They want to cut Medicaid for what looks like 13.7 million people. They want to cut SNAP, that's food access for children for a lot of, underprivileged families. And they also want to add $4 trillion to the deficit. What I want to see change is everything about the bill. Where they're calling the big, beautiful bill. I think it's a tax scam. That's what I want to call the bill. And there's lots of giveaways in this bill as well. I saw there was one for indoor tanning salons, for instance. So what they're saying here is that they want to give tax cuts to the wealthiest corporations, and to tanning salons, but they can't afford food for kids in schools. They can't afford access to care for people who need it most. And in the wealthiest country in the world, that just makes no sense to me.
I want to ask you a little bit about some of these cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. We know that that's been a strong Democratic talking point, as you just rattled off some numbers there. We have the spending numbers here as well. But the president has been pretty clear that he's saying he doesn't really want to mess with Medicaid other than waste, fraud, and abuse. Are you open to the idea of rooting that out to better the program?
I mean, this is the scam that's happening, is that they're lying about the bill. They're saying that they're not cutting Medicaid. They're keeping their hands off Medicaid. But it's very clear that the dispute going on right now in the Republican caucus is how much and how fast to cut Medicaid, right? Right now, the hardliners want to cut Medicaid immediately, and the bill says, let's cut it in a few years. And either way, it's going to have millions of people, sometimes tens of millions of people losing their access to care. And so, again, if you cut Medicaid, then even people who aren't on Medicaid will have less access to hospitals because hospitals will have to close down, especially in rural areas, and especially in some of these folks' districts. And then, we'll have people going to the emergency room more. And so everyone's premiums will go up. And so this is penny wise and pound foolish. And most importantly, it is bad for every single American.
Do you think this is going to get to the House floor tonight?
I'll say this is that Republicans, when it comes down to it, they care more about their loyalty to Donald Trump than they do about the American people. And I've seen it over and over again in this Congress, not to underestimate the whipping power of him, because it seems like the Republican caucus, even the so-called moderates, seem to fall in line with very extreme bills. And so I don't know if it'll happen tonight, but I do think they will bring it up for a vote this week, and we'll see what happens.
Look, if they do bend to some of these hardline Republicans that, as you point out, do want steeper cuts to Medicaid to root out the waste, fraud, and abuse, and they also want it to happen faster, those arguments are true. But I spoke with some Republicans who feel like they would like that, although they would support this bill as it is because this is at least a starting point. So do you see some of those hardliners moving more to the middle?
Yeah, I just wonder, a starting point for what? Because they're adding $4 trillion to the debt. So this isn't fiscal responsibility at all. I mean, just the hypocrisy. They only care about fiscal responsibility when there's a Democrat in the White House. But when there's a Republican in the White House, they rack up the debt and the deficit. I mean, this same tax plan in 2017, we already have the evidence that it doesn't actually pay down the debt. We already have the evidence that tariffs don't pay down the debt. Yet they're doing the same thing over and over again. And then they're telling people that they're not increasing the debt. So it's a scam, and it's lying.
All right, Congressman Subramanyam, keep us updated on how these negotiations are going, and thanks for your time today.